I've always wanted to ask you this. As you may or may not know, in North Dakota right now, there's a whole travesty of inhumane treatment towards the American Indians. Stay with me. Stay with me.
Yeah, I didn't know
Now,
about that.
aside from you also being a legendary saxophonist, you also play the flute. As you and I both know, the flute is a very magical instrument in the indigenous world.
Yeah.
Do you find, and were you inspired by that instrument to also touch your audiences throughout all these decades?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I went to Egypt when I left Hawkwind in 1976, and I spent time inside the Great Pyramid, and I played my flute in there, and it had such a fantastic sound. I thought, oh, I'd just record some flute music in there, you know, so I did, and then the idea of including within it the inspiration of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and then using it as a science fiction manual of this spirit that goes into a pyramid on Venus and meets the crew, who are actually all the Egyptian gods. So he has to meet, you know, Anubis and Thoth and Horus, Osiris, Isis, Nephthys, Set, you know, all of that, and all the 40, and the gods of wisdom and all these other characters. And, you know, it made me feel, I spent time inside the Great Pyramid, and then I found that when I came back to Britain, having done that, I had this power of healing.
Yeah,
I was able to put my hands on people and take the pain away.
yeah, I believe
And I
that.
try to do that whenever I can. So I think, you know, what was the question?
The question is well, you've answered that masterfully. The question was the flute, being that it comes from the origins of the indigenous
Well,
culture.
the flute is,
The
you know,
healing aspect.
yeah,
you
the
know,
flute is sort
the
of,
power.
yeah, it's a sort of, I used to visualize, I do flute practice where I just play one note, and I'd visualize myself in this tunnel, and this note was this great, the tunnel was the note, and I was inside it, playing with this one note, sitting in a lotus position, and then I looked down, and the surface was like mercury, and I just submerged myself in it, and then thought about all my friends and family, and healing them all, giving healing vibrations to them. And I think the flute is a very ancient instrument. It's one of the first instruments that made sound.
That's right.
It was the breath and the tube and so on. As a guitar is a stringed instrument. I mean, they're primarily, and they're both wind instruments. I mean, the guitar is a wind instrument. You can produce with wind on the strings. You can create all sorts of music. And I always felt that the flute was a very uplifting spiritual instrument and can carry people up in the air and up into space.
In actuality, it's a very freeing to break the shackles of this tyranny, this evil here on this planet.
Yeah. I mean, I've been reading lately about the Anunnaki who came to the Earth. They came from the planet Nibiru when this planet it was there before, called Tiamat, got blown up and created the Earth, Pluto, the Moon, and Nibiru, this planet. And these Anunnaki, I think they come from another dimension. Really, they're higher beings. They came to Earth. They're all giants, and they had this power. They came here to mine for gold. They got bored with mining for gold, and they produced a slave to mine for them, and he was Adam. They created the human race to work for them, and here we are. Yeah.
Here we are,
And I
right?
think that's as good an explanation as
And
any.
they abandoned us here, right?
Yeah.
They realized they made a tragic mistake.
They created us with a limited mortality and no memory.
Unbelievable.
And so I was so sort of riding that treadmill.
Now, I apologize for asking you this because I know you've probably been inundated for the last 40 years, but let me ask you this again. Tonight you'll be performing Hawkwind music as well, which is what a majority of your audience anticipates. But what I like about your latest releases is not only does it still pierce the soul, still has, as we talked about, the healing power and the fact that it can break us away and take us into this magical ride.
Yeah.
but it still has the same sincerity and power as the early Hawkwind tunes that you wrote. How is that possible? How do you do that?
Oh, I just, I'm just sort
Been
of,
touched.
yeah, I'm just, I'm not affected by celebrity or anything else like that. I'm just a regular guy. I'm a very approachable, and I'll talk to anybody about anything and play music with anybody.
What do we have planned after this tour here? Will you be recording new material?
I want to do several recordings. I mean, I'm doing some recording with this band in San Francisco after we finish this tour. And then I'm hoping to do some other recording. I've just done an album at the moment with Helios Creed.
Oh, nice.
And a guy called Jay Talzig. And this is an album for an Italian record label called Black Widow Records, who asked us to do this album about the Anunnaki and the creation of the humanity and so on. And they use quartz, and they use quartz to produce sound. I think they use quartz to generate the energy to cut stones and lift stones and stuff like that. So the quartz can produce sound, it can produce electricity, it can produce heat.
Wow.
It's got a lot of qualities, and I think they mined, and I think they left quartz in all these mines, and now there's this whole network all over the world of all these places, they're power points, where I think UFOs sort of charge up and stuff like that. The Anunnaki took the electromagnetic power from the Earth to power their spaceships and their energy and whatever they needed it for.
Will that album be released in the United States as well?
I hope so. It's coming out in July.
Okay.
The music is sort of based, sort of inspired by Sun Ra. So it's quite an interesting, different thing.
Absolutely.
Different feature. So that's one thing I'm doing. And then I've got bands in England. I want to produce a couple of albums for two of those bands.
You enjoy doing that?
Yeah, I do.
Right.
It's very creative, I think if I can produce music that touches people, then I'm really happy.
Yeah.
Because I try to generate positive energy, whatever I do. So I'm not sort of fatuous or bullshit about it. This is what I do.
One of the things that is always amazing to me, like artists like Nik Turner, think about it. For over 40 years, think about the decades. The late 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. So many tyrannies, so much havoc going on in the earth during those times. Yeah. From the Vietnam War to Nixon to Reagan to, you name it. The Middle East, and I could go on and on and on to the current day. There's a reason why Nik Turner is here. As he mentioned, and as I've discovered for over 40 years, the power of healing. There's a reason why this planet has not been destroyed yet. It's because you and I listen to music. Music is the salvation, and music is the healing aspect that keeps us all interconnected. Nik Turner, thank you for taking the time to speak to me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
And we're out.